has gone into, excess. Basically, this ayah is speaking about, or warning the Messenger of Allah against the company of the rich elite and the noble elite. Right? And to satisfy himself to be in the company of the poor who call upon Allah, worship Him, and, seeking His face, because to seek to be present amongst the nobles and the elite and the rich, then it's a kind of, it's, even though we know that the Messenger of Islam does not desire the glitter of the world, but this is an advice that he not be in their company, because this is like a type or a manifestation of being inclined to the world, right? But rather to be satisfied with the poor who are righteous and obedient and who are worshippers and who are not inclined to the world, rather inclined to the hereafter. Whereas the nobles and the rich and the elite, they are inclined to the world. And this is what we see all the time. The very rich, the powerful, the elite, they are generally inclined to the world. And when you mix with them and be in their company, then you will become inclined towards the world as well. And a fourth example, is when the Messenger of Allah is told to inform his wives, Ya ayyuhan nabi, qul li azwajik in kuntunna turidna al-hayata ad-dunya wa zinataha fata'alayna umatti'kunna wa usarrihkunna sarahan jamila. Say, O Prophet, to your wives, if you desire the life of the world and its glitter, then come. Then I shall release you, meaning divorce you and separate from you, and give you a handsome, release, like a beautiful release. So, again, this is another example to show how the Prophet ﷺ was told that if his wives want the ease of because being the wife of the Prophet is an affair that requires patience and, effort and so on and so forth, toil, struggle, and that he was told that if you want the world, I'll divorce you, and you can have the world. I'll give you a beautiful separation. You can go. So again, this is another ayah which explains how the Quran warns against being inclined to the world, because having that in your heart can lead you to do things which are oppressive and lowly and despicable, or make you, lose sight of the hereafter. So this is the beautiful way that the Quran has presented this message to us. Ibn Mas'ud radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, he read the ayah or the passage, Sabbih isma rabbikal a'la. Sabbih isma rabbikal a'la. Glorify the name of your Lord the Most High. And he kept reading this surah till he came to the ayah, Bal tu'thiruna al-hayata dunya. But rather you prefer the life of the world. Then he stopped reciting the Quran. And he turned to his companions and he said, Atharna dunya ala al-akhirah. He said, we have preferred the world over the hereafter. فَسَكَتَ الْقَوْمِ. The people then, the companions became silent, thinking, what is he saying? And he said again, آثَرْنَا الدُّنْيَا. We have preferred the world. لِأَنَّا رَأَيْنَا زِينَتَهَا وَنِسَاءَهَا وَطَعَامَهَا وَشَرَابَهَا وَزُوِيَتْ عَنَّا الْآخِرَةِ فَاخْتَرْنَا هَذَا الْعَاجِلِ وَتَرَكْنَا الْآجِلِ. He said, again, we've preferred the world because we've seen its beauty. We've seen its zina, its adornment. We've seen its women. We've seen its food. We've seen its drink. And the hereafter has been, veiled from us or separated from us. And we have chosen the temporary, or that which is present now, and we have abandoned that which is, in the hereafter. So Ibn Kathir, rahimahullah, commenting upon this statement, he says, from Ibn Mas'ud, this is simply, he's being humble when he's saying that we have preferred. Well, he's just being humble. And, otherwise what Ibn Mas'ud is really saying, that he's speaking about society as a whole. He's not speaking about himself. Right? He's just being humble, but instead of saying, you people have left and you people have this, and he's being humble and he's saying that we have, meaning as a society. Right? That this is how he's describing it. So the intent then is, okay, so once this is clear, we have been warned against being inclined to the world because it leads to these outcomes. However, and this is important now, when the Quran warns from being inclined and preferring the world, then there's actually a condition that we need to make clear. In fact, we'll come to that very shortly. But for now, the statement which will explain. Let me just mention a few of the meanings of these ayat. It can mean that you Muslims you are acquiring more of the world than you are acquiring rewards. This is another meaning of that verse that Ibn Mas'ud commented upon. Yeah, you prefer the world over the hereafter, meaning that you prefer gathering the world more than gathering reward for righteous deeds. And another meaning of that statement, بَلْ تُؤْثِرُونَ الْحَيَاةَ الدُّنْيَا, is that it refers to the disbelievers in general. Why? Because the disbelievers have preferred the world, they are pleased with it, they are satisfied with it, and they turn away from the hereafter completely. Right? So some of the explainers say that this ayah is referring to the disbelievers only. Others are saying it refers to the believers as well. And what is correct is that this ayah and what is similar to it refers to everybody. Everybody enters into this. Disbelievers and also believers as well. Disbelievers who abandon the hereafter in totality, and believers who give preference to the world over the hereafter, and gathering the world over gathering righteous deeds. So this now comes to that exception that we were going to make, the important exception. We're going to finish on this point, inshallah ta'ala. And so this is from the Mufassir Ibn Ashur, who says, it's a paragraph, I'm going to summarize what he basically says. So what he basically says, that this admonition in the Quran regarding the world is only for the one who falls short in preparing for the hereafter and doing those things that will save him in the hereafter. Any person who falls short in that, then he is the one who is preferring the world over the hereafter. Right? That's who it's referring to. As for benefiting from the world, like in wealth and possessions and things of that nature, then that in itself is not necessarily blameworthy. It is only blameworthy when a person ignores and abandons the ways and means of being saved in the hereafter. Right? Otherwise, to merely be in possession of worldly things, that in itself is not blameworthy. So we need to be very clear about this, right? The world itself, as we said at the beginning, for a believer, the world is daru sidq, daru ghina, for the believer who uses it in the right way. Right? These admonitions are for when a person, he neglects those things that are going to deliver him in the hereafter. So long as he is doing those things that are going to deliver him in the hereafter, then whatever worldly possessions he acquires by way of means that Allah has made halal, and whatever he enjoys by way of lawful clothing, food, possessions, and so on and so forth, irrespective of what it is, then that is not blameworthy. That is not blameworthy at all. Right? So the issue comes down to neglect of being delivered in the hereafter. And there are some ayat in the Quran which are evidence for this. So for example, the ayah is mentioned here with respect to Qarun, right, the minister of Fir'aun, in which Allah Azza wa Jalla, He says, وَابْتَغِ فِيمَا آتَاكَ اللَّهُ الدَّارَ الْآخِرَةِ. Seek out of that which is Allah has given you, the abode of the hereafter. Meaning, from the wealth which Allah has given you, use it to seek the abode of the hereafter. وَلَا تَنْسَ نَصِيبَكَ مِنَ الدُّنْيَا. And do not forget your portion in the world. So look at how the Quran has balanced between the two things, the hereafter and the life of this world. Right? Use the world, whatever you have been given, to arrive at the hereafter. But do not neglect what you have of the world either. So Islam has a very healthy attitude towards wealth, possession, and likewise to the hereafter. Right? This is opposed to the Marxists and the communists and the socialists and these people who are fraudsters and deceivers and cheaters and swindlers, right? Who basically vilify wealth and say wealth is the cause of all oppression and tyranny and injustice and whatever, and they want to destroy capital. All of this is a scam. All of this is a fraud. All of this is just some very, very clever people at the top who've realized this is a good way that we can mobilize people and make them revolt against the rulers, against the kings, against the queens, make them believe that capital and wealth being, concentrated in people's hands is the root of all evil. Let's rebel against them. And then they lead the people to rebellions. And really all they're really doing is using these people to basically topple the kings, the queens, the rulers, the institutions who have the wealth, and then take that wealth themselves, and then put the people who they used to rebel, put them into basically slavery. This is what communism is and socialism is. And that's what every social democracy in the West is basically running upon. Right? This is a statement of fact, what I've just told you. Every single Western social democracy is just simply a veil for communism. That's all it is, nothing else. A central bank, centralization of all transport, of all the means of production, right? Indoctrination in the schools. You read the 10 planks of Marx's communism, every single Western social democracy is basically running upon that. The democracy part is just to deceive you into thinking that you've got a choice. Well, you don't. Right? It's socialism, it's communism in slow, small steps. So Islam, look at this one ayah, speaking to Qarun. In fact, if you read the whole passage, when it mentions Qarun and whatever follows, of the people of Qarun being amazed at his wealth, and he came out with his clothes dyed in saffron, with all of his people, and the people becoming amazed at this, and thinking, well, we wish we had this. And then he becomes swallowed, right? The whole passage, it's got a beautiful, balanced position towards wealth. Right? Wealth is not haram. Wealth is not evil if it's used in the right way. If a person seeks the hereafter with it and does not neglect his duties towards his Lord. Right? Wealth is not the source of evil. Right? So do not be brainwashed with these ideas of redistribution of wealth, right? This is just a means of looting people's wealth, right? The Quran has come to establish the rights of all people. So here, as we said, that this is an important distinction that we have to make, right? That a person, these ayat apply to a person when he neglects the hereafter. When he's not neglecting the hereafter, then the wealth, the mal, everything else, this is as long as it's lawful, then there's no blameworthiness in that at all. And this is now a healthy attitude towards wealth. Neither are we on the side of the communists, Marxists, socialists, who detest that wealth should be in people's hands other than theirs, and want to plot schemes in order to steal it and enslave everybody else. Nor is it on the other side, where people basically use wealth like the capitalists, and they loan it out to interest-based loans, and they enslave people in another way. Right? It's a healthy way that you don't hoard it, you spend it, you make it go through into the society, there's zakah and all sorts of things. We have a very healthy attitude towards wealth. So you shouldn't think, I fear wealth, and I shouldn't go. No, don't think like that. Actively go out and seek wealth, but then make sure you're not neglecting the hereafter. Right? So every believer, you should try to increase in wealth and find lawful ways of increasing wealth, because wealth is strength. But at the same time, fear Allah and do not neglect the hereafter by way of it. So we have a very healthy attitude towards wealth. We don't fear it, and nor do we become deceived by it. It has to be balanced. And that's what these ayat basically teach us. We'll finish with a verse, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا اسْتَجِيبُوا لِلَّهِ وَلِلرَّسُولِ إِذَا دَعَاكُمْ لِمَا يُحْيِيكُمْ وَاعْلَمُوا أَنَّ اللَّهَ يَهُولُ بَيْنَ الْمَرْءِ وَقَلْبِهِ وَأَنَّهُ إِلَيْهِ تُحْشَرُونَ. O you who believe, respond to Allah and His Messenger when He calls you to that which gives you life. And know that Allah comes in between a man and his heart, and to Him shall you be returned. To Him shall you be resurrected and returned. Ash-Shawkani said, the majority of the Mufassirin, they said, the meaning of this ayah is, respond to obedience. Respond to Allah's obedience. And respond? This is Surah Al-Anfal, Surah 8, verse number 24. Respond to obedience and whatever the Quran contains of commands and prohibitions. This is what is eternal life and eternal pleasure. So upon a believer is to strive, and to know the reality of the world and know how he should basically behave in the world, and not to neglect his hereafter. So we'll stop at this point. We've got a small section left, which is something else which is very important. We'll continue with this inshallah ta'ala in the next lesson. Or if you want, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We can continue with it after the prayer if you wish. It's up to you. It might take about half an hour, but if you don't, we can leave it till next week. Yeah, okay, we'll leave it till next week, inshallah ta'ala. So we'll end there, because it's obviously connected to what we're discussing, because I mentioned, the Marxists and the communists and the socialists and things like that. And the next set of ayat speak about people who live in luxury. Luxury. In the Quran, there are many ayat which speak about those who were destroyed were the very rich, powerful people who were living in luxury and committing evil deeds. Right? And so this is always in every nation you see there are the powerful who live in luxury and who are arrogant and they are disbelievers, they don't believe in the hereafter, and they oppress the people and mislead the people, misguide the people, and those people follow them. Right? So it's obviously connected to the point that we just made about wealth and a healthy attitude towards wealth. So inshallah, we'll recap what we discussed, and we'll take up that discussion in the next lesson, inshallah ta'ala. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, wa sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in.
We're okay to continue if you're okay to continue. Can I ask a quick question before we go for prayer? Perhaps it's more of an advice on the last point, which is that our religion doesn't forbid us from acquiring halal wealth, things from the dunya, as long as it's not done at the expense of our Jannah.
Yeah.
So, I suppose the question or the advice that I'd like to ask is, how do we balance, and what does that balance look like practically on a day-to-day basis here in Britain for us Muslims that want to acquire the wealth and things of the dunya, but not at the expense of the hereafter, but surrounded by people who acquire wealth as their end goal.
As what?
As their end goal,
okay.
Wealth and whatever else. So practically, what does it look like for us Muslims here in Britain to get the balance on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah. Obviously, with that question, I'll repeat that question again because probably the sisters might not have heard it. So basically, the question is how, in light of what we've discussed, how does a Muslim, practically speaking, strike a balance between trying to seek wealth, on a day-to-day basis, and at the same time not neglecting the obligations that we have in terms of our individual obligations, in terms of the basic pillars, and likewise our responsibilities to families, children, in terms of educating them, teaching them, giving them tarbiyah. How does a person strike a balance? Now this is it's a very subjective question, because not everybody is in the same situation, right? So it's not like one answer for everybody, because not every person is in the same situation of, do they have existing wealth? Do they have any savings? Are they working? Are they self-employed? Do they have a business? Are they investing? Everybody is in a different situation. And so this disparity, this difference, this itself is from the law of Allah and His creation, right? He apportions to whomever He wills, and He puts different people in different situations. So there isn't one specific answer that can be given that's going to be the same for every single person. But what we can do, what we can say, is in terms of general pieces of advice or practical advice. Then the first piece of advice, so then obviously then it's up to you to then go and take that advice and use it however you see fit. So the first piece of advice is that you have to have time management. You have to be able to utilize your time in the most efficient way possible. Why? Because in this country, and in fact most countries, we have so many things pulling us in different directions, right? So we have, first of all, our financial obligations towards the family. We have obviously our obligations, the religious obligations, and we find that the thing that most people lose out with respect to is time. We just don't have enough of it, right? So you have to free out your time on a weekly basis. You need to have time before you do anything else. If you're not prepared to make time, then you are not going to be able to seek wealth. You're not going to be able to build wealth. You're not going to do anything. So the first commodity, the first thing of value that you should be thinking of is time. Before you even think about anything else in terms of how I'm going to make money, what I'm going to do, it's got to be time. Right? So you've got to sit down and think, what are the things which are killing my time? What are the things that are taking time away from me? Right? Everybody knows from his own experience. You need to be able to put aside a certain amount of hours per week, be that 4, 10, or whatever it might be, and then you need to use that time in order to go to the next step, or the next point, or the next point then is basically to gain knowledge. Acquire knowledge as to how can I make wealth? How can I build wealth? What are the various ways and means I can build wealth? Right? And the ways and means to build wealth, whether it's saving, whether it's looking at avenues, whether it's acquiring a qualification in something, in some skill or some discipline or whatever, to make yourself more employable, or to, take on part-time work, or to contract work, or whatever, right? That's open to you what you want to do, and every person's situation is different. So first of all, it's got to begin with time. Then that time is going to be used fruitfully in order to investigate, research, pick up skills, think of business plans, do whatever, then seek the help and assistance of other Muslims who who already have expertise and skill, right? You do all that, and then you find a direction. You find a direction that you want to follow and that you want to go in, and then obviously it's got to be halal, and it's got to be lawful, and it's got to be done in the right way. So I can only really give you those two things because then after this it's now going into specifics, like specific things. Well, what should you get into? I don't really know every individual person's skills. Like, for example, you could be you might have an aptitude for programming, for example. So what I could say to you then is that, there is a huge, absolutely huge market in programming and, computer programming languages, because all of industry and all of commerce and all of contracts is going to go in the direction of, financial technology, blockchain technology, things like that. This is where the fundamental shift is going in the next 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 years. The whole society is going to change. This is where it's going. It's inevitable. So I could say to you in general which direction to go in, which skills to get to make yourself employable with high paid jobs, right? And this will apply even to Muslim countries because it's global, right? So what you should be thinking, so first of all, find the time, make up time. Use that time to start doing serious research into trends, which skills are in demand or which are going to be in demand. Then either you seek them yourself or you nurture your children to have those skills, right? You direct your children from an early age to certain disciplines and skills that they can use to basically make themselves employable or even set up, their own businesses at some time in the future. And so the additional thing I want to say as well, that the issue of mutual advice between Muslims, because Muslims we don't really speak often enough amongst each other. Sometimes a person's by himself thinking of ideas. He doesn't really know that there's maybe 10, 15 other people across the country whom he knows, other Muslims who could actually help him and give him direction. And there's enough wealth to go around. So I guess the other thing would be also that, there should be mutual advice between Muslims, people of the Sunnah, in advising each other in terms of giving advice, help, assistance, things like that, in setting up businesses and becoming strong in that way. This is really, really crucial and important, and it's obviously a very important question you've raised, and it can't really be discussed in a small question answer like this. But
touch slightly on that balance from the wealth side.
Yeah.
How about the aspect of the deen? Because we seem to get engrossed in that.
Yeah.
Because we're surrounded by people that's their primary focus.
Yeah. But that's why I said. But that's why I said you have to make time in your week. You have to say, for example, right, I'm going to get all my chores done, and basically Saturday morning from 9 till 2 in the afternoon, that is just my time to dedicate specifically to this, right? So that's why that's part of the answer, because I know we have religious obligations. So in all of that, you have to find that time first, in order you can specifically dedicate that time to lay out your plan and your further directions. So that's why I'm not really giving you an answer to your specific question. What I've told you is how to go about what the basic method you should use to allow you to address this problem, right? So it's time management first and foremost, right? And then doing research, and then networking and finding assistance of other Muslims who can probably assist you and direct you, whether it's in terms of investment, whether it's in terms of employment, whatever else it might be. There's so much know-how that Muslims have, but it's not being shared between them, and so that needs to increase more and more. So I've given you like general things which will facilitate for every person how to go about the specific thing in their own specific way. But so you could come to me and I could give advice what I know. Somebody else might have more knowledge on international markets and trade in different countries, and give you advice with respect to that. And this all is, as I said, very subjective, and that comes down to the details at the end. But Allah knows best. It's a lot more to it. Okay, we'll stop it. Prayer now, inshallah.